marketing is all about people. And so I think if they can take that kind of love of people through the program, no matter, again, what level they're at, and that understanding of people and understanding how we all have these kind of different motivations, needs, and wants, it makes them more empathetic as people. And that can really serve them well no matter what field they're in, where they end up. Whether it is, understanding it because you're going to be buying products for them, or whether it's because you're a salesperson who can understand the problem. I think that's really the key.
Hello and welcome back to UNA Talks. My name is Lee Taylor. I'm your host, and today my guest is Dr. Alisha Horky. Alisha is an associate professor of marketing in the Sanders College of Business and Technology, and I will let you tell our listeners and viewers all the things that you teach, because there's a lot of them.
There's a lot, and we're adding them all the time.
Good.
I teach at the undergraduate level. I teach principles of marketing, which I really love, and digital marketing, and then I also teach social media marketing every now and then. Then I also teach in the MBA program. I teach strategic marketing analysis, both in our online program and then also in our Asia MBA program. And then I also have just started teaching in our executive doctoral program, our EDBA program. I teach research design.
Awesome. Very cool. So we've got you really busy around here, so I won't take up too much of your time today, is what I'm hearing. No, very cool. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up in marketing in the corporate world, and then also, of course, in your educational career here at UNA.
Right. Well, it's kind of a long story. So I had no intentions of being in marketing or being a professor, but it goes kind of back to high school. I'm old enough that I was in the computer magnet, and we were learning how to build web pages. This is before, of course, the .com bubble burst. And so that's what I started learning that. And I was really interested and really excited in that space. But at the same time, as soon as I could work, I was working, and I was working in retail, and I really loved it. And so kind of that whole time through high school, I was working and building web pages. Graduated. At this point, the bubble had burst. And so just kept working in retail while I stayed through college. And at that point in time, moved around several different jobs and ended up to where I was actually, by the time I graduated college, I was managing an outdoor store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I was getting to see all the different pieces of marketing come together, right? I love retail because that's where you see it all. You see the supply chain, the inventory, pricing, you get to interact with customers,
in real time,
everything,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? All the pieces come together. So I love that. And so I got to do that, for several years through college, through my beginning of my MBA, and that's kind of where my life went whoop, because I actually had a job offer to go be a very large paddle sports buyer on the East Coast, and I was very excited about it. But at that same time, I had a lot of faculty who were encouraging me to continue into academia. And so it was really kind of a struggle because it's like, I love the outdoor industry. I love paddle sports. I would love to be a buyer. And then but I also love to do research. Mm. I really love to do research. And so that's kind of how I ended up on this academic journey.
Yeah. There's so many of our professors that I've talked to that have a toe in industry and have a toe in the classroom all the time, continuously, or they themselves either found themselves jumping back and forth or have found a way to sort of make both work, all the time. So I love that, not just in the College of Business, but really throughout the university, that there's so much real world experience that people bring in with them because they're passionate about that, but they're also passionate about teaching and research.
Yeah, we don't want to be left out, so even now, my father owns a small business, and so I'll go to the conferences and shows with him and help him out with buying, and we try to keep a toe in with some of the local small businesses to try to help out where we can, just to continuously kind of see what's going on in that space.
So where was all this happening? Where did you go?
I was in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So and so you're doing that, and then you decide to further your education. Yes. What was your research based around?
So kind of going into, I started out with outdoor specialty retail because that's what I knew and that's what I wanted to study. And so that was my first ever paper that I worked on, was looking at the media habits of sensation seekers. That was
cool.
A long time ago, but it kind of helped me blend kind of what I'm still doing now is what I knew from my work experience and what I wanted to understand, right, from my research.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really funny to look back now and think that was about media, and it's before we really talked about social media.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But we were just starting to kind of get there.
What year would that have been?
I think it was 2008.
Yeah. So
before, I mean, we had social media,
this,
but it wasn't huge. Yeah.
It wasn't the monetized, the beast that dictates culture that it is now in a lot of ways. Yeah. Very cool. So what were some of the early findings? I mean, I have to keep this hat off as much as I can as an interviewer today because I'm a marketing guy myself.
Right.
So I'm like, oh man, that's so interesting. But I will ask, like, what were some of the findings early on? This is pre-Instagram and sort of all of the algorithmic sort of things that we experience every day that we're all almost, it's almost second nature to us now in some ways. But what were some of those habits that you were looking at in that demographic? So I guess you said
sensation seekers.
So
people,
these are outdoor enthusiasts.
Like whitewater kayaking was our main group because that's what we worked with mostly. But people who engaged in things like rock climbing or skiing, like more high adventure sports. Yeah. Right. It was really there's actually a sensation seeking scale, so you would look and see how people fell on the scale compared to their media habits. Yeah. There was a lot of blog use even then because it was such a specialized field that people were looking for those message boards. You remember all the message boards that used to be very, very highly specialized? Yeah. Which I think that's really interesting because we're still seeing that, now.
Sure. Like, it's just Reddit and whatever. Yep. Yeah.
But it's still the specialized.
Yeah. So why the outdoor industry? Was that just what you were doing?
That's what I was doing.
Is that are you a sensation seeker? Are you in that category? Okay.
No, I was once upon a time. I did. So back when I've always loved being outdoors. My parents were great to take us and travel around and get to see a lot of the national parks and a lot of the just to be outside. But when I started managing the store, that's really kind of when I deep dove into that culture and into all those different companies and into that kind of lifestyle and really enjoyed it.
So you mentioned that the career path was sort of that was being paved was around purchasing and buying and stuff. So how does that work? And I'm genuinely asking because I'm fascinated sort of by retail and how those supply chains work and who's in the middle of that, making all that happen.
So me too. And I still am. That's why I still try to keep my hands in the purchasing as much as possible with my dad's company.
Right.
So it really is it's data driven. We were talking about that, but looking to see kind of what things have sold in the past, working, especially with things like paddle sports, so kayaks and canoes, that's not something you're going to keep 100 of at a time, right? So making sure that you have efficient what's a good word? Adequate levels of inventory, right? But that you still have space to store that. So making sure you don't have too much or too little of anything. You don't want to miss a sale, but you don't want to overload your inventory and eventually lose profit on that. So kind of keeping that balance, but especially looking again at the data and again, we talked about this, but trying to understand, what are people wanting? What are the new things that are coming out? What are people going to be excited about? And making sure you have that in stock in the right quantities.
Yeah. So what are the behaviors at this time that you're doing this research, and maybe we can translate that to today? What are the behaviors of this market, of this sector, and how are they informing how people make better decisions around those kinds of things? Right,
and especially back then, yes, we had the message boards, but we still had the local retailers were so important. That's when the salespeople were coming in, and yes, we were learning from them, but they were learning just as much from us, like what people were interested in, what people are going to do on the weekends, where they're paddling, what kind of boats they're looking for. And so it was really a lot of that information sharing between the sales reps and the stores.
And so, and customers are going to stores because the internet is not going to tell them everything they want to know like it does today. They have to kind of go, let me poke my head into this outdoor location and talk to the sales rep or talk to the guy on the floor or girl on the floor to see, well, what is, like they have to kind of manually educate themselves a little bit. That's a little bit more of a self-driven practice at the time, I would think.
Yeah, and we as the salespeople had to be so informed, right? And I had to, as the manager, make sure that my salespeople were so informed. I really, at that point, I think now too, but I think then we really had to know kind of what we were talking about because again, we were the catalog.
Yeah. So you're basically mining sort of these message boards and blogs and things like that for that kind of information and are you taking that and adapting it for these companies to like help them innovate around those kinds of things or to answer or just answering those questions, or is it a little bit of both?
Like our research. in the research.
Yeah.
And those are just to help to understand, right? So we can see, where do we need to be present, which is what we're still doing, right? Where are our customers getting their information so that we can still be present in that space and make sure that that information is getting to the right place and the right people.
Cool. Yeah, it's fascinating to see sort of this interstitial role that is played in that, and it still is an active role. It's just maybe a little bit more empowered because there's more data to access. So you go into research, and then you go into, when do you start teaching after that?
So a little bit maybe different path than some people. I actually started teaching before I started my doctorate. And they pretty much had to twist my arm to do it. I'd already decided I loved research. I was going to go maybe even get another master's after my MBA in research. And they're like, well, why don't you stay? If you're not sure, why don't you stay a year and teach for us? And
where was this?
This was at Auburn University, Montgomery.
Yeah, okay.
And just wonderful people who were there at the time. And they were like, well, can you stay and fill this role for us for this year? And I was like, y'all, I don't think that's me. I don't think I'm a teacher. I don't love being up in front of people. I think I'm more comfortable in the research. And so they got me to come in and guest lecture for an intro to business class to teach the marketing portion of that. And after that, I was hooked. And that's all I ever wanted to do was, to teach. And so to be able to, I taught for that year. During that year, I was applying to PhD programs because at that point, I was like, yes, teaching and research, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I think people assume a lot of the times that marketing folks are these kind of loud, like, class clown. And they're always, almost in my experience, like, sort of folks that like to see how things work. They're sort of social engineers in a way. Like they want to understand behavior and why people do things. They don't necessarily love to sell and be out in front of people all the time. So
there's a little bit of room for everybody in the field because there are definitely those, we love the salespeople and they're out there, but there are a lot of us who really just do want to watch and understand and maybe not necessarily be at the front.
But then you get them talking about something that they're interested in, and it's over, right? And then you have this room of a captive audience, and you're like, "Wow, this is great!"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's really cool. So, what has that been like since at AUM, right? And then, how'd you find your way to UNA?
Oh, so another pretty long story. So I did my doctorate at Mississippi State. Actually, I also taught at Alabama State for a summer before, and that was fantastic. Yeah. Just making my way through the state.
Yeah.
But then I taught at Mississippi State the whole time I was getting my doctorate, and I love that. During that time, I met a friend who is getting her doctorate at Ole Miss, and that was Erin Gillespie.
Yeah.
Yep, who is also a professor now.
Yeah.
So she actually graduated a year before me, got a job at Elon University in North Carolina. When I was on the market looking for a job that next year, she's like, I think you would just love it here. You should apply. Yeah. And so I did. And I went and taught there for 5 years, right? Then I just joke that I follow Erin around, but Erin left to come here to North Alabama. And the year after, I had a child. I wanted to be closer to home. So we moved to Columbus State in Georgia. And so I taught there for a while. But then Erin was here the whole time, and every time I talk to her, she's just telling me how amazing and how unique and how special UNA is.
Yeah.
And so when a job came open, position came open, she said, we just apply. Come visit and come apply. And so I did. And, when you're talking to your friend and they have nothing bad to say about work, that's a pretty good indicator that it's a special place to be. Once I came and visited and met everybody, I just knew this really was a special place, and I'm really, really happy to be here now.
How many years ago was that now?
3 years. 3 years. Just in my third year.
Awesome. We'll have to thank Erin for her work in that regard. That's awesome. And what is I think, since you're so multifaceted just within the College of Business, what is the kind of the common thread that you find at UNA and the College of Business in the way we program and the kinds of students that seem to find our way here, the kinds of faculty that seem to find their way here are folks like you who really want that face time, that one-on-one interaction, right? Like that's what UNA does. Like that's kind of who we are at our core, and it seems to make sense to professors who want that environment, which is always really fun to see. But what do you think that common thread is for our students that's sort of unique, not just the culture and the community here, but the students that you interact with from all the way from graduate to doctorate level?
I think that's it. I think everybody who chooses UNA is in some way looking for that sense of community and connection. We're very purposeful. I really like that. I really appreciate that, seeing how purposeful we are at every level, from the programming, what programs we're going to have, we're not going to have. The things that they're so supportive of is that they're very purposeful. Like we know that we're all on a mission to better the lives of these students, right? And we're all kind of working together towards that, whether it's the faculty, administration, students, and that's really nice to kind of see everybody have that same goal in mind.
And it doesn't. You're taking the same philosophy from a traditional in-person class to online. Yeah. Tell me about how that translates for you, or what your experience is like in that.
Sure, and like we said, do I love to be in front of a classroom? Absolutely, and so it really is a lot of effort goes into trying to make that online environment kind of feel the same. Mm-hmm. So we always have, message boards where we try to get to know each other and share our opinions and share our thoughts. And sometimes they're silly. The last case I did in my online MBA class was about the Cracker Barrel, rebranding. And how do people feel about that? And people are very passionate about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's okay. And that's a chance for us to get to know each other and to kind of have these discussions just as if we're being in class. I also try to always have videos where it's just me. And it's me, and I don't edit them. One, because I can't stand it. But two, because I want them to know this is really me, and this is how I am in person. Yeah. And so they, and sometimes I even see people who have had me in an online class, and they're like, oh, I love your I call them mom jokes instead of dad jokes, but I tell dumb jokes in my classes, and just to try to have that sense of connection where we really do kind of feel like we know each other.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dr. Horky. I know I am. I can't wait to talk about data and metrics and all the fun stuff that I get to think about a lot. But I wanted to encourage you to go to una.edu/online. The University of North Alabama is the sponsor of this podcast, and so we're really grateful for that. And we want to make sure that you know where to find all of our online programming. We have, of course, our famous MBA, which Dr. Horky teaches in, but we have a lot of other programs that can help people achieve their goals, and everything from business to education to engineering. There's really just kind of this endless amount of opportunities for education online here at UNA. So we want to make sure you know about that. You can learn about scholarships, ask questions to our program coordinators, to our recruiters, whoever you want to talk to. You can do that from that page. And also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. We're also on LinkedIn and YouTube. So check us out there, give us a follow, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and tell your friends. And now we'll get back to our conversation with Alisha Horky. So what is marketing data like in 2025? It feels like endless amounts of it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to conglomerate. It's hard to interpret for a lot of people. So how would you describe what digital marketing data does, how it performs, what it is in today's landscape?
It's a lot. That's what it is.
It's a great word for it.
It really is, because, we're just thinking, yes, the digital marketing data, so we think about that being the social media data and our e-commerce data. But then, if you're really looking at larger companies, they're also bringing in any of their actual store data, any kind of offline data they have. So putting that all together, it really is a challenge, I think, to try to sort through it, right, and decide what's important and what's not, because it's amazing that we have so much, but there's no way that we can look at every piece of that data or have it interpreted correctly or well. Mm-hmm. And so we have to. That's when we have to put on our human hats and go, okay, what is my question that I'm trying to answer? Yes. And what piece of data can I try to find that could help me answer that question?
So, great example, like GA4, Google Analytics. So I'm going to put my marketing hat on just a little bit and just kind of just give us a place to start, because like you said, it's a lot. There's a lot of places to go to, and now with AI, there's a lot of ways to interpret it and reutilize it in all sorts of ways, right, and add value to it. But Google Analytics. So whenever you're talking specifically around social media, and running campaigns and using Google Analytics to track web traffic and all those kinds of things, what kinds of things are typically in the industry people using that for on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So especially to look at your traffic sources, I love GA4. We actually teach it in the program. They get certified in the program, in our digital marketing program, and then also in the MBA class we use it. just to be familiar with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, especially to see those traffic sources, like where am I seeing people come into my website from? There's also, you know, this major problem we have in the marketing industry, which is the attribution problem is what we call it.
Yes.
Because we want to know what marketing action actually led people to us? And that is just a really, really tough question. And this is where, you know, we're seeing the data, especially through GA4, they have attribution models that are helping us get to that answer, but we're never going to get perfectly to the answer, right? So I can tell when was the first click, right? When was the last click through whether it was on social media or whether they, you know, got an email from us, or what was it? What brought them here? Was it a Google search that brought them here first, right? Was it a Google ad that brought them here? But, you know, trying to ultimately figure out what action we took that got them to us. And so that's one way that the data through GA4 and through other programs is trying to help us understand kind of where we made that first contact.
Right. And there's a bridging of the gap that data helps us figure out, it seems, where it's not only what choices did we make that drew in the consumer, but what was the consumer behavior that drew them to the action.
Right.
So where do we let data talk, and where do we try to not let it overstep its boundaries?
Right. I think it really is asking the data good questions, right? And so we have to, again, is it what do we, from observing our customers, just for example, if we were in the outdoor industry, well, how are we going to segment them to really understand what are those critical components that make a difference between one group and the other? Is it how often they're going out to engage in this outdoor activity? Is it what kind of activity? Are they going alone or with friends? And that's something that we can let the data spit that out, right, and make us a model. But really, if we understand our customer group well, we can ask those questions of the data and get more accurate results.
What's the kind of research that accomplishes that, right? Like, what kind of research do we do to understand our customers? Like, what if you could only pick sort of like the top tier of those you know, entry points of data, what would they be?
Well, it depends. I actually ordered a T-shirt the other day that says "It depends," and I'm gonna wear it in class because it depends on questions. Again, you know, I do think I love surveys. Surveys are great. But they're closed-ended, right? We're not going to get depths of data from that. It's really effective to be able to kind of look, well, first, if we could interview customers, that's fantastic. That's labor-intensive and it's costly. To be able to go in and look at customer comments and to actually look at the posts where they're tagging our company, tagging our products, and really trying to kind of understand and code those and keep that in the research database as well. It gives you that depth of data beyond the numbers that you're getting from a survey or from something like GA4.
Mm-hmm. And where is the part where we have to sort of say we're not, or maybe you have an example of this or something, but where we have to say, data is not going to inform our customers' feelings. Like, it has to be something that we understand about their behavior, right? So like it's going to have to be something that's more prescriptive. Like, we have to kind of tell them or inform their decision in some way that they don't get to make that decision. Yeah, where would you say philosophically maybe is the best place to sort of draw that line? Because at some point you kind of have to,
Right.
If you're deciding, you know. You're getting all of this information, right? So you're saying, what made you choose this over this, or what made you choose this over this? And then if that metric is just not always consistent, then where do you decide to draw the line to say, well, we're comfortable with this margin of error or whatever, right?
Sure. And, you know, to kind of move away from the data, I think that's really where you start to just understand your product really well and what value that is. And to stick close to that, you know, where your value is. It doesn't really, you know, because if we just start asking customers, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? That could really draw us away from what we were originally going after as a company.
Right.
You know, you asked for an example, and I think I'm not a paid endorsement, but I think Yeti does a really good job with this.
Oh yeah.
Their content is just amazing. And so it's a wonderful example, and it's one that I use in class a lot of content marketing, where they are not kind of just pushing the features like you say, what made you choose this cooler. That's really not what their campaigns are about. It's about the lifestyle, and it's about the emotion, and it's about connections. And so that's, I think, a great example of a firm who, yes, they've got tons of data, they're very successful, but when you look at their marketing strategy and campaigns, it really is about people.
Yeah, the media habit. Whenever you mentioned the media habits of the outdoor, the thrill seekers, I'm like, that's the first brand that comes to mind because well, their media habits are centered around that brand is so effective, right? Because what they're not doing is making a bunch of commercials about their product. Because who cares?
Yeah.
It's a cooler at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
They're great coolers.
Keeps your food cold.
Yeah.
That's it. But and it does it very well, and they charge they're very expensive, but that's because they do a great job of that. But what they seem to understand is that we're just going to make the kind of content that our consumers, that our customers enjoy and identify with,
Right.
and then that draws them back. So they sort of become the sponsor.
Right.
Which is where the name sponsored content sort of comes up in media circles or in marketing circles.
Right.
So how does that change in the social media world? What other companies maybe are doing that, or how does that involve people with the brand? What does that actually add up to in dollars and cents?
Right. I think as we see more firms moving towards that kind of content, and then also looking for the user-generated content, see it across, especially Instagram and TikTok, as we see companies, for example, beauty companies putting out the beauty tutorials and really paying attention to how people are using their products. It's really helping them become much more successful. Like the Fenty brand, they've gone with all their different shades of makeup they have. That's something they drew from social media, right? Where they got all these comments, are like, hey, I'm not finding these things that are working for me. And so they responded to that in a way, and it released all these different shades of makeup, and it's helped them become very successful.
Yeah, so they're mimicking what they're seeing their customers or their demographics doing, and they're saying, oh, if this is the kind of, then let's get involved in this conversation and make the same kind of content that ends up drawing people back to the solution that we're offering.
Right.
That's kind of the idea, it seems. So I guess whenever a company then decides to become, hey, we're going to enter into the conversation by being content creators, when does that become maybe unhelpful? When would you say that, we're mining the data, now we're using it to our advantage? When do companies maybe perhaps get in their own way by doing that?
No, I think companies can definitely get in their own way, especially because we are so sensitive now to that lack of authenticity. So we'll hear different stories come out about brands that would maybe send something to an influencer and then take it back, or the influencers maybe not. Maybe they're a really great influencer and they're doing really well with some brands, and then they try to put a brand in there that just doesn't quite work out and it doesn't fit the image. And I think now consumers are so used to it that they're noticing things like that. And so that's when we really do have to make that decision. And it's kind of fun. We have a simulation that we use in our social media classes, and you get to make that choice of what kind of influencer you want to use, how big the influencer is, what is their target market. Because I think that's a decision companies are having to make all the time is, this is a great influencer, they're doing well for other companies, but can we authentically use them for our product? Because I think at this point, the customer's going to notice if it's not authentic.
Yeah. And that kind of reeling back to, not just social media and sort of using data to influence your decisions. And then maybe they're not asking the right questions in that instance, right? They're like you said earlier, that's when we sort of misstep, and we're saying, the question shouldn't be how can we get as many likes or whatever, or get as many sales, but how do we use data to make a better product?
Right.
Maybe the better question to answer, because then that product will have a lot more longevity and things like that.
Right. You can't outmarket a bad product.
Yeah.
Like you just can't. Like you have to have that value that's going to appeal to your target market if you're going to be successful.
And so what about this, because of the massive amounts of tools that are at our disposal in marketing now, or I talk to agencies all the time, or they call me a lot, and we have conversations, but around, hey, if you want somebody with blonde hair, blue eyes, in the middle of Alaska, we can find them, kind of just like they just want to. To them, that's a value proposition. They're saying we can target people so specifically. What do we, when is that, and maybe the answer is the same, but when is that, helpful, and when is that hurtful, whenever we start getting so specific about who our customers are?
Yeah. It can be both, and that is something that we talk about all the time. That's one of the great value adds for digital marketing, is that we have that specificity. I can find people who have friends who have a birthday within the next month who also like cats, and I can sell them cat T-shirts, right?
Yeah.
And so we can do that, and that's wonderful if you're selling cat T-shirts. Yeah. But there's limits to that, right? We really, this is again getting into really understanding kind of the motivations behind it. Especially if we get too trapped into demographics, that can be problematic, because we don't want to, exclude someone who's in our target market based on them not being in a demographic if that's not really what we're looking at. If we're looking at, heavy coffee users and people who, like, free trade, fair trade coffee.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily going to fit into a certain, demographic thinking the way we would as far as age, income, right? So it really is kind of understanding where your segmentation variables are and what they should be based on what you know about your customers.
Yeah, just because a lot of your customers tend to be one thing, or maybe maybe like on a chart, doesn't necessarily mean that that's your ideal market, or that doesn't mean that that's that might be a coincidence. Yeah. Causation does not, or correlation does not equal causation. Right. That's a scientific value that we can add to that to say, it just depends on what your goal is. Yeah.
And there's a really famous article about marketing myopia, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting who wrote it right now. But it's basically that idea is that we don't want to get too focused on selling a certain product. We want to focus on selling a solution, right? So then it opens up. It's not my idea, but it's a good one. Yeah. But it opens up to a lot of different markets at that point, because then you're looking at anybody who has this problem that we can solve, right? As opposed to like, well, here's these features. Well, but if I have, I think from that is the famous saying is like, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole, right? And so, well, if that's the problem, then we're able to solve it. There might be different ways to solve it. And so that kind of gives us more ideas about who our competitors are and who our market is, if we can figure out really what value we can add and what problem we're solving for people.
That reminds me of another quote that I can't take credit for. Yeah. Seth Godin, who's a brilliant guy, right? Says, don't find customers for your products, find products for your customers.
Right, yeah.
What's the problem that you can offer, or you can formulate a solution for? Because the problem is the question you're answering that helps you find your demographic, who's all looking for the same solution. The product that you have may not be the perfect solution. Maybe there's other things that you can offer for them that kind of veer outside of that, because you already have their attention. So why not offer them some options? That's really cool. I clearly love this stuff because I'm like, oh yeah, it makes me lily pad into a new idea a lot of the time. What do you teach? So whenever your students who maybe have never looked at the back end of a website, like they didn't have, because nowadays building a website is
different.
A whole lot easier.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
I had to use HTML.
Yeah, exactly. Or all the kind of these antiquated tools that we had to learn, for sure. But now it's you can literally click a button and AI will make a website for you, or whatever all those things are, and it can sort of give you all these fields and populate them for you. What do you tell them about sort of the dangers maybe of that, or some of the roadblocks that are there, whether they can see them or not, around developing a website that solves a problem, or developing a social media outlet that offers solutions, or does all the things that we need to holistically think about?
Roadblocks to what?
Roadblocks to maybe just because you have access to all these things doesn't mean you need to use them. That's kind of what I mean. Yes.
So always being purposeful. You mentioned goals earlier. What is the goal of this website? What is the goal of the post? When we teach social media, every post needs to have a goal. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? We're not just posting because it's Thursday, I need to post something. So what are you trying to accomplish? Is it information? Is it engagement? And to really set those goals and to set metrics for those goals and to see if you're meeting them. It doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's not great to build a fun, informative website, but just to know what you're trying to accomplish, because that's going to cut through a lot of the noise on the back end as we're looking at the data. Is if I knew what I was trying to accomplish, well, then I can go look at the data and see, okay, well, if I made this change, did it change the number of clicks on my website? If I made this post and I changed it from the last time I tried something like this, well, did it change engagement? And so I really am a big fan of goal setting in digital marketing.
Yeah. what about creativity and just sort of like, I mean, you do see more and more, I think, people, I feel like I see it, maybe you have a different experience, but more and more young people, like that's the outlet for their creativity is social media, which then they can leverage to market, or they're marketing and they're just using social media as like an excuse to be a marketer. I don't know. Right. Depends on who the person is, but where do you see the role in creativity being the most useful in sort of the landscape that we're in?
Yeah, so I think once we have the goal, once we have the message we want to convey to meet that goal, then that's where the creativity comes in. Then I say, well, how can I meet this goal? How can I get this message across in a way that is going to stand out, that is going to be unique, that is going to be a little bit something different that's going to catch that attention? And so I think that's where we play with it. And I think sometimes a lot of people, especially, I'm so jealous of them, but those that have the natural creative talent, they want to start there. And that's when I kind of, see one of my jobs is to kind of pull them back and say, yes, you're amazingly talented. Let's figure out where we can put that in this kind of hierarchy to really make it work and be most effective.
And the hierarchy, you would say...
Sorry, setting the goals.
Yeah. At the top of the pyramid is you got to have a goal.
Yes.
What is your goal? What is your thing? And then the message supports the goal. The creative supports the message.
Yes.
That kind of it. I agree. And I think not that you're asking my opinion, but I do agree with that. Just because otherwise we're just kind of, putting things out there that gets a lot of engagement, but well, now you got to do that again because you only got, a couple things out of it that you really needed.
Yeah. And we try really hard to kind of get that real world experience in things that we do. So we had a very fun marketing club activity in the spring where we had a UNA graphic designer come in, and we gave the students briefs of a real firm where they had to go through and create a logo for them. But it couldn't, again, just be like, okay, create a logo. We had to give them kind of the facts that they had to stick within these certain parameters, certain colors, so that, again, they knew what they were trying to accomplish, and then they could be creative and kind of showcase that talent.
What do you think, though, what role does branding play in this landscape? Speaking of, right, I wanted to ask you that earlier, and I sort of forgot about it. But, yeah, what role does branding play? What is it? How does it work in this landscape? How does it inform all these things that you're talking about?
Sure. So branding is incredibly important. It's kind of the backbone of everything we do because that's how people are going to recognize your brand. And branding has a lot of different facets. Of course, it has the logos and the colors, but it's also your brand personality. And so that's the kind of thing, again, that we kind of want to put at the top of that pyramid, where we know exactly what our brand is, no matter what we're going to be looking at specifically throughout the digital marketing or any of the marketing spectrum, to know what we want to convey, right? So, again, the tone, the personality. We all know Wendy's is a great example. They have this kind of a little bit snarky, sarcastic tone in their social media, and people know that and they love that. But I tell people that, when William my son was like a year old, he knew when we were going to Target because you could see the Target, right? And so it's that way to kind of stick with people. And so they're always going to recognize when they get any kind of communication from you that this is this brand. And making sure that we're being consistent with that is really key, especially across platforms, both digitally, but then also offline as well, being in store. I keep using outdoor brands because that's the world I used to live in. REI does a good job with this. They're almost annoyingly helpful in store, and they're almost annoyingly helpful online. Right, the box pops up where it's like, here, can we help you? Can we help you? And it's wonderful for people who do need a little bit of extra help, in that space. And so it's just that consistency with personality is really great to see in the branding.
And do you think that might be data informed, right? Because if they're annoyingly helpful, then maybe they have a lot of people go to REI for their first kayak.
They do. And I joke about it because, again, that's the world I used to live in. But they are so helpful. They really do put a lot of emphasis on that because they do know that's what people are coming. And they're great because, again, they stick really closely with their brand. They were the first to do the opt-out side for the Black Friday. Instead of having a big Black Friday sale, they're like, nope, go outside. And so that was great because it adds that authenticity to the brand. Because it's not like we're not just going to say we love outdoors, we're going to prove it because we're going to close on this busiest day of the year and encourage people to go outside. Patagonia, again, outdoor brand, does something similar, where they're not just going to say that they care about the environment. They actually have a program where you can, sell your clothes on their platform, which is crazy. And so it's those touches that add the authenticity to the brand.
Yeah. So I've asked you, what role does creativity What role does branding play in all of this? These are sort of the things I think are at a high level that everyone seems to have an opinion about. You talked earlier about whenever Cracker Barrel changed their logo, there was like a message board discussion, a heated, enthusiastic discussion rather in your MBA class around like this brand means a lot to people. They probably they're on road trips with their family growing up and things like that. What role does storytelling play in all of this, right? When we're constantly being inundated with ads or just media that's trying to grab our attention in the attention economy, where do you see storytelling fitting into the landscape now, and maybe how it evolves a little bit as a result?
I think it's becoming even more important. I think that's, it's a crowded space. Social media, digital world, it's a very crowded space. And those types of stories are what help people connect with their brands, right? So whether it is a story about employees and people working there, whether it's about a day in the life, whether it's packing a box, anything that's kind of giving people this connection to the brand is something that can set it apart.
Yeah.
In the MBA classes, we do a case where we use Maersk, which is a big international shipping company, and it's not something people would automatically assume is an amazing social media case, but they really are. I think last time I looked, they had 8 million followers on Facebook. And that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's a shipping company, right?
It's a B2B.
It's a B2B shipping company. I mean,
Right.
I'm not going to call Maersk anytime soon and ask for them to ship something.
Yeah.
But they do storytelling so well. They do storytelling in a lot of different ways. Again, they'll talk about their solutions they provided. They'll talk about the new ships that are coming out. They'll talk about their customers. They talk about their employees. And so it really is building this sense of connection with this brand that maybe not everybody's going to turn to every day, but they're going to recognize it and they're going to have a positive opinion about it.
Yeah. That's branding like 101 a little bit. It's like you want to go to see what people are doing, and are they really who they say they are?
Right.
Are they really standing behind their values? And all of these are really, really good examples. And whenever that fails, whenever that breaks apart because of how they react to something in PR or whatever that is, like we take notice, and the message boards get filled up, and people get upset and feel like they've been lied to a little bit. So it's really sensitive.
So we actually use that Maersk case. I have several months of their data from Instagram and from Facebook. It's all data you could get publicly, but I have that in spreadsheet form, and so we actually use that in the MBA classes to be able to look at that data, look at the content they created that was more or less successful, and to allow the MBA students to make some suggestions as to what types of content or they think will play well given the current scenario, given what was going on then and what was working well, what's going on now, what they think would work well. So it's a nice chance for us to be able to see some real world data and make some suggestions.
Yeah. I find that so fascinating that, so more and more companies are getting into what feels like the storytelling business, right? Like Maersk sees that there's a value add that bolsters their other efforts. So it may not be a direct connection to the bottom line because, like you said, but it's not. That doesn't mean it's not informed.
Right.
Just because it doesn't completely empty into their bottom line, it invigorates other efforts that then have these residual effects.
Yeah. I do feel like we're all kind of playing the long game with the storytelling and with the branding.
Yeah.
It's going back to the attribution problem. We talked about that earlier. It's a big data problem. It's hard to see, if we make this post now and someone sees it and then they go, work at a job in 10 years where they're going to make these shipping decisions, what was that impact?
Yeah.
But we're kind of hoping for that, right? As we build these brand connections, as we get brand sentiment to be really high, we're hoping that will pay off long term.
And so that's kind of leads to my last, like I asked you about, creativity, branding, storytelling. And I think the last thing that I think is these things that are very hard to quantify.
Right.
They're clearly valuable because everyone's doing them, and it does add to the value of these things, but they're hard to quantify. What about this risk factor, this lack of predictability? What about whenever Patagonia it was REI. REI said, we're not opening up on Black Friday because we want you to go outside with your families day after Thanksgiving and go hiking. Yeah. All right. There's a huge risk involved in that. Yeah. It was good branding, but was it good marketing? And there's a risk factor. So what role does risk and sort of this lack of embracing the lack of predictability play?
Right. that's tough. I mean, we are always going to make a marketing decision and hope it goes well. As informed as possible. It's not just hope, right? But we are using as much data and as much understanding. I believe in that case that REI really did know their customer base well enough. They knew.
That's a data-informed decision.
That is a data-informed decision.
Yeah, for sure. It had to be.
Yeah, because they have the strong membership programs. They know that people, were going to be wanting to go outside, right? Having to spend this time outdoors. So I think it was for them, it was risky, but not super risky. But no, I think anything we do is going to have an element of risk because people are strange.
Yeah.
We can't, if I ask, why did you buy that? You may not be able to tell me, right? We don't always understand the things that we do in the moment or later. And so that's when we really just kind of have to, at a point, do our best to understand the data, to understand people, talk to them, and then make a decision, and then be ready to change on the fly, right? So we are talking a lot about marketing agility now. That's something that we saw in the strategic management space kind of blowing up, and now we're talking about it more and more in marketing. But how can we be more agile, especially in things like product development and content creation, right? How can we shift on the fly if something's not working and we're not meeting our goals? What can we do to kind of shift that?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dr. Horky. I wanted to take a quick break and just remind you to go to una.edu/online. If this conversation is interesting, we've got a whole lot more for you in terms of our online programs, things that you can learn, and programs that are going to help you achieve your goals, whether they're just things that you're curious about that you want to learn more about, or ways to advance your career. So we want you to check that out at una.edu/online. Make sure and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, formerly known as Twitter, and YouTube. And so thanks for doing that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll get right back to our conversation with Dr. Horky. So all of these things are, there's a million things we can talk about, and it's very multifaceted. How does marketing data enter into the classroom conversation? What are the first things that we want our students to know about, and then how does it inform their journey as they continue to learn?
Right. So we use it in a lot of different ways, and honestly, a lot of classes. I'll talk about it from a digital perspective, but almost all of our marketing classes incorporate data in some way because it's a piece of everything we do. So even when we're looking, for example, in the Principles of Marketing class, that's when we first introduced this concept of benchmarking. Because again, as we talk about having goals and as we talk about putting out pieces of marketing content, we kind of have to know what we're doing. People are always a little bit shocked when I tell them the average engagement rates, across different industries, and that a lot of times we're doing great if we get 5% engagement. That's amazing, but you would never know that if you're not looking at that data constantly, right? Yeah. And so that's one thing, is just making sure they understand to look at the bigger picture, to use the information that's available to find out where they are and what they're doing. Above that, as we get into our digital marketing and social media marketing classes especially, this is when, whether it's through simulations or whether they're data sets that I have, that people start to get to look at the data and they get to start to make those decisions. And we try to help them ask good questions of the data and give them some questions of the data. Yeah. So they can practice with that a little bit. We do use Google Analytics, like I said, to be able to see that backside, and then just to ask them to interpret and to think about possible causes or possible reasons, because I kind of love sometimes that we don't have all the answers. Like, I don't run the Google website, so I can't tell you what was happening, right? But I'm like, okay, well, if we're seeing this number move, what do you think might be causing it? And so to start to think through those questions more than just, okay, well, this is the answer. And to know, one thing that's really hard and that we try to emphasize a lot is there's not necessarily a right answer. There's the best answer in this moment given the information we have. And that's honestly a challenge, I think, for students to get to that place where they can be comfortable saying, okay, I have supported this decision, I've used the data, I've used what I know, and this is what I think we should do. And knowing that it may not be the right answer. Yeah.
There's the human factor, right? It's like, we're not predictable. No. We do weird things that don't always make sense, and we can only sort of make our best guess based on the information we have. So there's always going to be risk.
Right.
What are some of the experiential opportunities in your classes that help students, kind of determine a goal and then, figure out how they want to gather data to test their KPIs or the return on their investment or whatever it is?
Sure, and it just depends on the class and on the semester. There's always something, right? We do use, there's some really great simulations out there where you can actually every week make your content, send it out into the simulation and get back your results and then make those adjustments. That's a really nice.
Is it a simulation?
Mm-hmm. It's a simulation that we use in class. Cool. Yeah, it's really neat. You have your company and you are their social media manager. And that's really fun because you get to see the numbers come back and you get to make adjustments, which is not something that's always something you can do in class. So that's one thing we use. We also work with different organizations around the Shoals area. So we've worked with a couple of different nonprofits where we have designed social media campaigns for them. Again, trying to look back at their data, anything they can provide us, and then use that and any kind of comparable data that we can find to make decisions and develop plans for them.
Yeah, I need to get with you about that with the university stuff for sure. I mean, that just sounds like it'd be. I'm sure I could learn a lot just from seeing how they what information they're looking for, and it's fresh for them. So
the students have some really great ideas. It's really fun to work with them on that.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. What are some of the maybe the things that you're looking for? Like, what is the maybe most important outcome? Maybe isn't the right question, but maybe one of the most important outcomes, for lack of a better question, that you're looking for in any marketing student. What is the moment that, or maybe I should ask it this way: what was the moment for you in this field that fascinated you enough to where you wanted to just dig in deep and really understand, and do research and really understand it, from going from working in retail to wanting to understand sort of how this all really works and why people make decisions and understanding how marketing really works? What was that spark for you? And then when are you hoping to see that for your students, or what are you hoping to look for in your students, or hoping to see in your students?
Sure.
And their experience?
Yeah, I don't know if there was one moment. I think it was just always, again, I'd worked in retail since high school. It's like a drive, and so I was always interested. Anytime, well, this is a really great product. Why isn't it selling? Mm-hmm. Or, wow, why are we selling out of this? This is horrible. Just trying to understand that. And I think that just built and built and built to the point where I just really want to understand people and understand that value for them. And I think that's really what I'm hoping the students can understand, is that another really hard thing to teach is target markets. And that seems like it would be a very simple concept, but getting to the point where you realize that not everyone is your target market is really difficult, because you're like, okay, of course I want everybody to, buy my product, be my customer. And trying to get that delineation is hard. It's like, well, yes, you want that, but that's not necessarily your target, right? We have to understand who we're creating the most value for. And that informs kind of everything we do. Again, what problem am I solving? And who's that most important for? That's a really tough thing. And so I feel like if we get there, again, through whether it's looking at the data or whether it's doing case studies, class discussions, right? If we can get to that point where you really understand kind of target market and creating that value, then that's really valuable for them.
Yeah. And I think having those actual real data sets to look at, and local businesses to partner with, businesses that they might already have a context for what they actually do and who they are. Maybe their parents work there, who knows, right? They can see what that actually looks like in real time, and then, try it out and see if their ideas are contributing well to that. What do you think is kind of your hope in general for, after they graduate, right, and they go out into the real world, whether it's undergrad, grad, doctorate, what is the impact that you would hope for any of your students to be able to make in the offices or the businesses that they're a part of, or nonprofits they're a part of?
Right, and I think marketing is all about people. And so I think if they can take that kind of love of people through the program, no matter, again, what level they're at, and that understanding of people and understanding how we all have these kind of different motivations, needs, and wants, it makes them more empathetic as people. And that can really serve them well no matter what field they're in, where they end up, whether it is, understanding it because you're going to be buying products for them, or whether it's because you're a salesperson who can understand the problem. I think that's really the key.
Would you encourage anyone in marketing probably to work in retail for a little bit?
I encourage everyone to work in retail, retailers or any kind of food service too, because I really do think that's where you learn to understand people. But yeah, definitely for marketing, I think it's a great place because you see all the pieces come together. That is where B2B and B2C meet. So yeah, it's a great place to be.
And if just hypothetically, if someone was putting together a podcast to promote a university, what tips would you give them on how to promote that well and what kind of content they should be focusing on?
Figure out who you're creating your content for. Make sure that you have the content that would answer the questions or be entertaining, for that audience. Don't ask marketing professors to do it. They're probably uncomfortable in front of the camera. Yeah.
No, you've done great. Well, it's been really great talking with you. I was picking on you in that last one, but of course I appreciate your insights on all that stuff. But it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really cool stuff. Hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. And we hope to see you again here soon at UNA Talks. Thanks.